I was not there, but I remember. There is a small thing beside the candle tonight, a string of prayer beads resting on the grey stone. You have watched many things lie beside that flame across these nights. A torn veil, an empty cradle, a standard with no hand to carry it. Tonight it is only this, a quiet chain of beads, the kind a man turns in his fingers in the dark when there is nothing else left in his hands. Look at it while I speak, 'cause tonight is the night of the one whose only weapon in the end was the thing you do with beads like these. Tonight is the night of the prayer. My voice is steadier now. You have heard it climb back night by night, since it broke at the trampling. It is not yet whole, but it can carry this, and it must. Because the one I tell you of tonight is the reason any of us survive to carry anything at all. He is my grandfather Ali, the son of Husayn, the one they could not kill, because God would not let them. Hold the beads in your eye. I will tell you how a man holds a frontier with nothing but his hands turned upward. He was burning with fever on the day of the 10th. That is how he lived. My grandfather lay in the tents of the women, too ill to lift a sword, too weak to stand among the men of the morning. And so, when the swords had finished their work on every other man of the house, they came to the tents for him too. They came for the last man. And the chronicles tell what happened. The order was given to kill the sick young man on his sickbed. And my aunt threw herself across his body and said, "He is not killed except that you kill me first." And even the hardest of them faltered, and the order was withdrawn. Understand what that means, my beloved. He did not survive because he was spared. He survived because God placed an illness in his body that kept him from the field, and placed his aunt between him and the blade, and kept him alive on purpose against the whole intention of the empire, so that the thing the swords were sent to end would not end. They cut down every man who could fight. They did not understand that the one they almost overlooked, the fevered boy in the tent, was the one who would carry the whole of it forward. The empire counts swords. It does not know how to count a line. They put iron on him. This is the thing I make myself say plainly, the way I have made myself say the hard things on every night. They took the great-grandson of the messenger of God, sick, barely able to stand, and they fixed an iron collar upon his neck and chains upon his hands, and they drove him out of Karbala on foot and in fetters at the head of a caravan of widows and orphans, with the heads of his father and his uncles and his brothers raised on the points of spears above them. From Karbala to Kufa, from Kufa, the long road to Sham, weeks of it, the desert by day, the iron on his skin, the children of the house crying for water and for the dead. The chains were meant to say one thing. This is what is left of the house of Muhammad, a sick boy in a collar, a line about to end. And the chains said to anyone with eyes the opposite, because the line was not in the sword, the line was in him, and no iron forged could chain what he carried. They bound his neck. They could not reach the thing they were actually trying to kill. You stood with me last night in the throne room of Damascus. I will not walk you through it again. My aunt's standing there, and his belonged to the night that has just passed, and I will not take from her what was hers. I will tell you only the one thing that belongs to tonight. When the tyrant set a hired tongue upon his pulpit to slander my family, my grandfather, chained in that hall, sick almost to death, asked to climb the same pulpit, and he did not plead and he did not beg. He simply told the room who he was, link by link, until the whole court understood whose sons they had paraded in chains. And when the tyrant, frightened of his own hall, called for the prayer to silence him, and the caller said, "I bear witness that Muhammad is the messenger of God," my grandfather turned and asked him before them all, "This Muhammad, is he your grandfather or mine?" There was no answer. There has never been an answer. His weapon in that hall was the open word. The testimony said plainly, in the room where it was least welcome. And then they sent him home. They thought they were releasing a broken man to live out his days in silence. They had no idea what they were releasing him to do. Here is the heart of it, my beloved, listen, because this is the night's whole secret. They let my grandfather go home to Medina, and they watched him. Every door of the open road was closed to him. He could not teach from a pulpit. The pulpit belonged to the men who had killed his father. He could not raise an army. The men were in the ground at Karbala. He could not raise his voice in the open. The spies of Sham sat in the mosque of his grandfather and listened. So when he could no longer raise a sword, he raised his hands. And when he could no longer teach in the open, he taught in the one language a tyranny cannot ban without revealing itself for what it is. He taught his servants how to pray. He sat in the long nights of his grief, and he wept until they called him the one who weeps, and out of that weeping, he poured the whole of the religion into supplication. The fear of God, the love of Him, the rights one soul owes another, the architecture of a just order, all of it smuggled past the censor inside the one thing the censor could not touch: a man talking to his Lord. He hid a curriculum inside a book of prayers, and the book has come down to us hand to hand across all the centuries between. And in that book is the prayer this night is named for the prayer for the frontiers. Think of what it is. A man under occupation, forbidden to hold any line in the open, sat down and held a line in a prayer. He prayed for the guardians of every frontier, and he taught inside the prayer what a frontier truly is. That the wall is never the fortress, that the fortress is the care of God, that the line is first held inside the heart, that its whole purpose is to keep safe the place where a forehead may still go down to God alone, and that the reward of the frontier belongs even to the one who never fought it, to the one who only prayed. That is what the chain man did with his hands turned upward. He took the testimony the swords had tried to end, and he hid it where no sword could reach, in the prayers of the believers. And he set it loose into every century after the empire that killed his father as dust and a byword. The prayer he wrote is on the lips of the people of the frontiers in our own days. That is the weapon of the occupied. When they take everything else, the prayer remains. And the prayer is enough. For 34 years he held that line. 34 years, my beloved, of watching and weeping and teaching by supplication, under the eyes of the men who had killed everyone he loved. He did not rise in arms. The hour was not his, and he knew it. His work was to keep the line alive, not to spend it. He did not despair. Despair would have handed the empire the one victory the swords had not won. He simply held year upon year. The fevered boy from the tent became the quiet, weeping imam of the long occupation, and he did not let the line break, and he did not let it bend, and he passed it on unbroken to his son after him. And do you know what carried him through those 34 years? The same thing he prayed for the frontier guards to be given. The world cleared out of the heart so that nothing the empire could offer and nothing it could threaten could pull him off his post. He was a man tied to God and to nothing else. He held a frontier for 3 decades with no wall, no army, no sword, no freedom. He held it with his hands turned upward and his heart turned wholly toward the one who keeps every line, and he knew the whole time where the road was going. that the earth belongs to God, and that he hands it in the end not to the men who carve it up, but to his servants who held its lines for love of him. He held the line in the dark precisely because he could see past the dark, the dawn it was being held for. I was not there, but I remember. And I remember that the line my grandfather held on a bed of chains has never once been let fall. It ran from him to his son, and down the imams of guidance, one entrusting it to the next, until it reached me here, behind the veils of my long absence. And because I am kept from you, it did not stop. It ran on, through the scholars who guarded his prayers under every passing tyrant, to the reciter, into the room where you are sitting, into you. You are holding it now. The same prayer, the same line. And in your own age, the same frontier still stands, and the same kind of people still hold it, almost none of them with a sword. The scholar at his desk in the dark, keeping the weak from being overrun by lies. The doctor who will not leave the wounded, the mother who will not let her children drift, the ones who tied themselves to God and stood at the seam between the oppressor and the oppressed and were taken for it. The reciter of my grandfather's prayer who became one of the people of the frontiers. The man who told his daughter that he had bound himself to God and to nothing else, and then went and held the line until it cost him his life. I will name them in full on the nights to come tonight. My grandfather stands at the head of them all, the first of the line holders who held a frontier with a prayer. To me, the awaited one, may our Lord hasten my return. Pray ardently for my return, my beloved, for I am the one for whose dawn my grandfather held the line in the dark. And when I rise, the last frontier between the oppressor and the oppressed will close, and the earth will be handed to those who held its lines for nothing but the love of God. And so I ask you the question I have asked at the close of every night. Only tonight I ask it of the chained man in the tent, the one they almost overlooked, the one they thought they had finished. Where is your brother? He held the line that I am coming to complete. He is in every prayer you say from his book. He is in this room. He is in you. And he is waiting for you to turn your own hands upward and hold the frontier that is yours.